And I thought this was an important distinction that Andy makes here, because he talks about how being against the war in Vietnam did not make him a pacifist, nor did it make any of the soldiers who were against it with him a pacifist. He said, in fact, it would have been difficult to find, soldiers who believed less in pacifism than they did. And so this really stands out, because a lot of times when we discuss the anti-war movement of the 60s and early 70s regarding Vietnam, it's kind of painted in this picture of, peace, love, hippies, flower children, that kind of thing. But it was quite radical in certain areas, whether the Black Panthers or the Young Lords, or in this case, the ASU and the organizing efforts at large. So anyway, after the investigation runs its course, Andy is court-martialed and, has to stand trial. The main crux of why Andy had to stand trial was because in the midst of Army intelligence and his unit at large searching the barracks and questioning the soldiers there, they had demanded that Andy open his footlocker holding his leftist literature that not only he but the rest of his fellow anti-war soldiers would read and distribute. It's no secret that most of this was also socialist, Marxist literature of varying shades. But Andy refused to open it, disobeying a direct order, and so his chain of command used an axe to break it open and acquire those materials, which would be used against them in trial, or at least attempted to. And because of his disobeying a direct order, he was about to face a summary court-martial in June of 1967. And he goes on to say, most summary courts-martial were for soldiers who have done something like going AWOL. Fort Sill's stockade was packed with AWOL prisoners, many serving a second, third, or fourth stretch. And the most severe punishment a summary court-martial can give is 30 days at hard labor in the stockade or 60 days at hard labor outside the stockade. And then there's, kind of explains that there's two other kinds of courts-martial, special and general. And a special court-martial can sentence a soldier to as long as 6 months in prison. And the general court-martial is the most serious, and it's usually given for refusal to obey a direct order and can result in a death sentence. Now, although Andy had disobeyed a direct order, it was an illegal order that violated his rights under the First Amendment of the Constitution. It also violated his Army Regulation 381-135 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which states that all GIs have the right to receive any written material they desire and may keep any books, newspapers, or pamphlets they choose. Nowadays, the equivalent would be like your Article 31 rights. But these were the regulations he tapped into as his argument. Although Stapp was able to invoke his constitutional rights as well as his rights under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, he was found guilty of refusing an order to open his footlocker, and so he was convicted and had to serve 45 days of hard labor.
Yeah, so Andy said in the court-martial, when he was handed down this guilty verdict and this sentence, he said, quote, "I refuse to let them take my literature because the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States guarantees the right of all Americans to free speech. This guarantee certainly includes the right of revolutionary socialists to organize within the Army against America's imperialist war of aggression in Vietnam. We GIs say this is not our war. It is Wall Street's war. To cite an example, Dow Chemical stocks have soared as a result of the 25 million pounds of napalm it sells each month to military forces in Vietnam. At the same time, the death toll of American GIs has risen in proportion to profits and has now reached the new high last week alone of 337 fatalities. One is haunted by the thought that such companies as Dow profit by the use of napalm, whose only target is man, and has killed our fellow GIs, including 16 GIs in the 1st Infantry Division last fall, and innumerable Vietnamese. Such thoughts prey on our minds, and we begin to question and seek answers. Many men in the unit are opposed to the war and have literature similar to what was in my footlocker. I was singled out at random for punishment as an example to others for the purpose of intimidation. The ruling class needs robots in its army, but we refuse to be unthinking cannon fodder. We are learning every day that until the criminal capitalist system which breeds war, racism, and poverty is replaced by socialism, the working class youth of America will be impressed into the imperialist army and forced to die for Wall Street profits in Asia, Africa, and Latin America.